Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next installation of our LinkedIn Live series here at Houghton, Texas. It's a Friday, it's a holiday weekend, but if you are choosing to tune in and actually learn something today or just brush up on some of your PR or marketing skills, kudos to you. Give yourself a quick pat on the back. So, if we have not met yet, my name is Aquila Mendez-Valdez. I am the founder and CEO of Houghton, Texas, and we are a full-service PR and marketing agency. We've been in existence for 10 years this year, which is always really exciting to have a fun anniversary like that. But today we're going to be discussing how female founders can create a compelling brand identity. So, when we think about brand identity, I think a lot of people just immediately jump to, oh, you're talking about your colors, your logos, your fonts, and we will get to that. But we're going to back up a little bit and start with maybe some things that you would not normally think of when you hear the word brand. If you're in the PR and marketing industry, you definitely know that brand encompasses a whole wide variety of topics. But if you are a small business owner, if you're running a startup, if you're thinking about launching a business, to you, brand may be a pretty straightforward word, or maybe not. And today we'll try to jump in and give you a few actionable items that you can think about and take with you to really make sure that when you are introducing yourself or your brand to people, that it makes an impact, that it's compelling, right? We want to be memorable. We want to be liked, admired, trusted, building up all of those positive brand associations, and a clear-cut, very well-designed brand identity is the first step to doing that. So we're going to go through 5 tips, and the very first one is probably not going to be a big surprise, but authenticity is the name of the game. We talk about this in things like our social media feeds. We talk about this with our interviews with journalists or PR, media pitches. How much are you willing to be authentic and genuine in the way that you convey your brand story? And so I think that's really kind of step one is in order to be a compelling brand, you have to define that authentic, genuine, sometimes vulnerable, sometimes raw story about how you got started or what your journey has been to get to where you are. If you try to launch a brand from day one and act as if you've got everything figured out and everything's perfect and you've never made a mistake, I think that consumers are savvy enough now to recognize that, and it feels a little disingenuous. So a compelling brand identity would be willing to showcase and highlight the moments that were maybe more challenging in order to get to where you are, or the hurdles you've had to overcome to create the product that you're now bringing to market. So when you're willing to get that level of authentic with your audience, I think that it does create a brand identity that is much more memorable and long-lasting in people's minds. I think about, for example, Wendy's and the story of Dave Thomas and how he started the brand. And yes, now on their social media, they're very like witty and savvy and, very kind of quick-witted. But if we look back at, some of the ways that they've also really sort of endeared themselves to the American public is through Dave Thomas's story of Wendy and adoption, and that sort of authentic, genuine story that they have presented that, he was a real human. He started a very successful restaurant, but he also had this human side of him that I think stuck in people's minds far more than a great burger or delicious fries or whatever it is, right? We connect with stories more than anything else. So that's step one, is to really decide how can you convey that authentic, genuine story. And then when you've done that, the second point in completing the process of creating a compelling brand identity is going to be understanding that target audience. Again, we talk about this all the time, whether we're creating a social media strategy or a media pitching strategy. Who is the ideal person that we're trying to reach with this story or with this brand? And then we can kind of decide, how do we tell a story that creates the desired emotion in that audience. So if they're Gen Z, if they are millennials, if they are boomers, if they are Gen X, wherever they fall along that demographic line, the story that they're going to connect to or the emotions that they're going to hope to feel from your brand are going to be different. So once we understand our target audience, then we can kind of back up and think about, okay, what would be the pain points that we're really addressing for them? And are we addressing that in our brand identity? Things like the logo, for example, the FedEx logo, having the arrow built in to convey that we're moving things forward. Do we trust FedEx as a carrier delivery service more because we see in their storytelling of their brand identity that moving things forward and doing things quickly and efficiently is part of their core values and identity? I think a lot of that is very subtle and sometimes can feel like, okay, that ad agency was just charging you $1 million to come up with a very frou-frou and sort of frivolous brand identity. But it does matter. It matters in not only your external communications, but also in your internal communications. If you are able to tell your team and your staff, whoever is helping you build your dream or startup, whatever it is, if you're able to tell them that you know and understand that customer really, really well, and here is why we're doing what we're doing, here is the way we are trying to present ourselves in the world so that customer can benefit or be relieved of some pain point, whatever it is, your team is much more likely to be able to get on board with that brand identity if they fully feel like you understand your target market as well. All right. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I can get that here on our live stream and see what questions you have, and I'd be happy to answer anything. So don't hesitate to drop a question in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer them. All right, so tip number 3 is now stepping into the idea of our visual branding. So your first impressions, anytime you are put in front of a potential customer on day one, is that brand. The human brain wants to quickly make assumptions and quickly make connections to what they think you're all about or what they think that they're understanding with the image that they are receiving. So if that image is a brand that feels very stuffy or serious, you're telling them something. If that brand looks very fun and silly and goofy, you're telling them something. So despite the fact that it seems like, oh, we can just go ahead and try new things with our brand and switch things up and, add things in there occasionally, you really want to fight and resist that urge because you want to be able to be reminding folks on a consistent basis of that brand identity. So whatever it is, whatever you want to say, there's not really a wrong answer. If you want to be a silly and goofy brand, be a silly and goofy brand. If you want to be a serious and buttoned up, brand, be a serious and buttoned up brand. But the biggest thing that you need to do is step number 4, which is document that brand. So yes, it feels great to go into Canva and start designing something really quickly or work with a graphic designer to create one quick logo. But what you really want to put together is more of a true brand kit. Now you can do this on Canva really easily as well. You can set parameters for saving your fonts, your colors, your logos can be in a specific file, very easy to access. But if you work with an agency, whether it's a branding agency specifically or a PR and marketing agency who's sort of helping you get your arms around your brand, if it's already in existence, one of the things that they should be doing for you is putting together a brand kit. Now that can look like a PDF that walks through everything about your brand as far as here's the messaging, here's the core themes, here's the do's and don'ts of how to use our logo. It can be very, very robust, or it can also be as simple as here's our colors, here's our fonts, here's our logos, and here's the 2 or 3 variations of that logo that are approved. Other than that, everything else needs to stay out of your brand kit. So it's kind of up to you how in depth you want to go, and you can certainly, customize it to your own preferences. But that brand kit is really, really helpful to not only document your brand for your own internal use, but as soon as you need to be able to share that or send it to somebody who's printing a brochure for you, or send it to somebody who is designing a billboard for you, whatever the marketing material is, handing over that brand kit very quickly and not having to kind of pull things from a million different Dropbox folders or Google Drive folders, whatever it is, having it all documented and ready to go will make their life so much easier. And again, will help you create that consistency so that there's no question in people's minds when they see something out there on the internet or in person, in real life, printed, they can immediately recognize your brand and have no doubt that it is you that they are interacting with, and hopefully give you a call or book a session or whatever the call to action is that you're looking for. When you've built up a compelling brand identity, you will have a lot shorter time frame that you're moving people through the sales cycle, because you don't have to fight so hard to build that credibility and trust. Your brand is already speaking for itself. It's recognizable. It's got that, brand awareness. And now people are ready to book in 3 times of seeing it versus 25. All right. So then next up here, we're going to talk about sort of one of my pet peeves, I think, that we'll kind of finish with here, and then we can answer any questions if we have them. But the last, 5th and final tip that I will give you is to focus on a compelling brand identity that feels timeless rather than trendy. I think it's so easy to see what's going on Instagram, or what graphics you see other people sharing and you really love. Like, for example, I feel like here recently we've seen, for example, like Brat Summer, come up with a very kind of consistent and clear brand with the lime green and the text, font being very, very specific. So it's easy to see those kind of trends take off and really be tempted to want to jump on that bandwagon. Or, we saw a couple years ago, I feel like the trend was all like wavy lines and kind of mid-century modern hippie kind of vibes a little bit. And so many people built their brands around that particular look that now I think in 2024, if you see a brand that looks like that, it's starting to feel a little bit dated. It's starting to feel like, oh, they're probably about 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, right? That's what we want to avoid. We don't want to be a brand that you can kind of timestamp and say, oh, okay, yeah, they were originated in the 90s or the early 2000s, or whatever time frame it is. So focus on a brand that you actually feel like will stand the test of time and that you feel passionately about on a individualized basis, not necessarily because it feels in the moment and trendy and popular. That's a quick way to feel like in a year or 2 that you need to actually redesign everything. And that can be extremely time consuming, extremely expensive, and just unnecessary. I know for us personally, we did a redesign of our brand right at about 10 years ago. And I still feel like that brand for us works. It's consistent. It's got that recognition. And there will be small things here and there that we will, tweak or mix up a little bit on certain materials. But for the most part, same logo, same colors, same fonts, all of that has stayed consistent over 10 years because we really went through the process of designing it, only thinking about our target market, who we're trying to go after, what our values are, what our core kind of mission statement is as a brand, and build the ecosystem around that versus, in 2014, what would other brands have been doing and what were our competitors doing, and getting just sort of distracted and sidelined by those types of conversations, rather than focusing on just a long-lasting brand that will stand the test of time. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that gives you some quick ideas as far as how to go about building a compelling brand identity. If you want to learn more, we actually have an ebook right up above me here in that QR code. So you're welcome to go ahead and scan that. It will go through a little bit more of public relations for female founders, but it also has some information on how to connect with us, how to join our free Slack community that also is a resource for female founders and their PR and marketing needs. And it's, again, completely free. It's not necessarily there to lure you into any sort of program or anything like that, but rather just to be a resource for you as you're growing and you're building your brand, because that is our biggest passion. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Aquila Mendez-Valdez. If you would like to connect, you can find more about us and our agency at hitpr.com. And I hope to meet you very soon.